Hello, hello. Mid-April, and I look like it's middle of the winter, but it's chilly here in New Jersey. I just walked my dogs. And I wanted to take a little time and come in and speak with you specifically around women and stress. So if you're a woman or you know a woman, you might want to listen in a little bit, but let's talk about that. Let me just share my screen with you. Hold on. And let's see. Okay. This is a graphic from Scientific American, which maybe I have I'm going to show you right here. This is um, the whole edition right there. And this special edition came out for the pandemic. They really started collecting data, Center for Disease Control, et cetera, looking at people and how this pandemic, which was such an opportunistic real life way to look at stress, right, and how people were being impacted. But that's where this is from. So this is actually from spring 2021, so just about a year ago. And one of the articles in here talks about the differences between men and women and how stress impacts them. So these were the things that the article really highlighted, but there's a lot more than just these things. I'll see what I can point out as we go along, but comparing women and men and the incidence of depression, migraines, IBS, or any GI issue, right? So they just put IBS. That's one thing I want to point out. Any GI issue, just where digestive disorders show up, inability to sleep, PTSD, and that's even with looking at men in the military, right? But just overall, that there's a PTSD more prevalent for women. Alcohol abuse or substance abuse is the one area that is higher for men. And when I went through the article, they suggested that perhaps men don't have the outlet to speak to people or don't choose to speak to people in the same way. So they use substances more often to cope. Generalized anxiety, even if you don't know why you're feeling anxious, having panic attacks. And again, the drug abuse, just like the alcohol, is higher in men. I would also say autoimmune conditions. We know there's a direct relationship of stress to autoimmune conditions and thyroid conditions, and women are definitely higher in that. Okay, so we'll just leave that up for one more second, and then I'll take it down, and we can talk more face to face. So if you're coming on, let me take this off. Let's see. If you're coming on, let me know. This is streaming in a few different places, and I can't see comments from everywhere, but I will certainly go back and look. And if you are hopping in and you have any questions, I would love to know. But now let's talk a little bit about what at least this article said is partly responsible for the differences between men and women. So they looked at a lot of scientific studies, Scientific American research, and a lot of that is done actually on rats, not on humans, but they looked at hormonal differences, genetic differences, even enzymes that will be a catalyst for metabolic reactions in the body. And there's definitely differences in male and female rats. And they, they can extrapolate that out to humans to a degree too, between certain genes. Definitely hormones. Hormones play a big part, not only in the womb, but also during puberty. There's a surge of certain hormones. And in the womb, the sex is already decided when this happens. So it is gender related. Surge of certain hormones then and in puberty that make a difference in how, like at a cellular level, the cells are responding and interacting. So it was very sciencey, probably more than you want to know, but I'd like to dilute it down into some info that could really help you. So number one, hormones are important. The number one hormone that is important for feeling good and for having joy and happiness is oxytocin. And that is a bonding hormone. That's a hormone that is made when women are breastfeeding after they give birth to help them bond to their baby and the baby to bond to the mother. It's also made when people are socially active and interacting with each other. There's an increase in oxytocin. It's also produced when people fall in love. So, oxytocin is that love hormone, and that is really critical. And if your body has the ability to produce that quickly and to uptake it. So that goes back to what I was saying when I first started, which is certain enzymes, certain receptors, certain genes that are different between men and women will determine how well they're going to process the ongoing other genes and hormones and things like that from stress. All right. So if you're just hopping on, maybe I'll put this back on. I had this graphic up so that you could see the differences between men and women in some of these major or more common lifetime issues or health issues, but this is not an exhaustive list. There's a lot more things. As I mentioned, autoimmune diseases, all autoimmune diseases have a strong relationship to stress, and pretty much all of them tend to be more prevalent in women. Thyroid conditions, also more prevalent in women. Very much stress is a number one root cause for thyroid conditions. All right. So here's, looking at, all right, there's a genetic, the genes that men and women have are different. The hormones that men and women have are different. We can't do a lot about that, right? But what we can do is really look at what would make a difference for everybody. I'm taking that off again. And that is, how do we process stress? What makes us interpret something as stressful? How do we change our ability to interpret that and to lower or decrease the impact of whatever the circumstances are? And how do we develop resilience? Okay, so let's look at the first part of that. The first part, how do we change our interpretation? How do we change how we respond to events? And that really is all about your programming. So computers are very much designed after the human brain, right? When a computer is programmed, and if you put in like one little thing wrong, if you're entering an email address and you forget the, .com or whatever, you're not going to find what you're looking for. You mistype one thing because it's set up, it's programmed to read it exactly as it should be. And if you mess it up a little bit, you get an error, it doesn't go through, whatever. That programming, that system is very much like our brains. We have a neural programming, a neural pathway that gets set, some of it before we're born, a lot of it after we're born. And once those pathways are set, that is how we see the information. And when people are stuck in chronic stress, when people are in fear, because really stress is a fear response. That's absolutely all it is. It's a fear response. And maybe that sounds a little dramatic because it's like, oh, I'm stressed because I have a lot of deadlines at work. But the bottom line to that interpretation, the bottom line to your response is a fear. There's a fear there of what's going to happen if I don't get it done. Who's going to be disappointed in me? If I don't get it done before I leave on vacation, will I have even more when I get back? And, just fearful of those consequences. So that's hopefully a simple example that shows you fear is present. You would not be having a stress response if there wasn't fear present. So what is the programming that has our brain interpret something with fear? Because really, we should only be fearful when our life is in danger, right? Like that's really the way that the system is made. Somebody's attacking you. There's, an event like there's a hurricane and your house is going to be blown off. Like your safety and your life is in danger. That's really when you need a fear response. Anything else, you may need to respond, but it doesn't need to come from fear. So when fear is present, when you have a stress reaction, fear is present. And it's present because of something in your programming that has you see that event through the lens of fear, or I was going to say from a place of fear or through the lens of fear. That's what happens. You see it that way. So let me think of an example. It might be, oh, here's a good one. I was just speaking with a friend of mine a couple of days ago, and we were talking about, she was saying that she would really like to have more balance between the time she spends at home and the time she's at work, right? She was feeling very stressed, and overwhelmed maybe is a stronger word, but definitely stressed in finding a good balance. And the time that she spends at work is up to her. She gets to say how much she wants to work, and when she wants to come in. So, but every time she decides I'm going to have better balance and I'm not going to take on so many hours, she finds herself saying yes and taking on more hours. So that was our conversation about that. And she was like, "Why do I do that?" And that's because somewhere in her programming, she heard when she was little, um, she's the one to always get things done. Maybe. I don't know. I'm going to make up. But she heard something that overrides her decision to balance her hours in a way that suits her better. Something overrides that conscious decision, and it's her programming, just like the programming on your computer. So she might decide, um, I'm the one that always saves the day. I'm the smart one. I'm the one that has to show up. Or she might decide, I'm not a good person if I don't say yes every time they ask me. Maybe she overheard an adult in her life when she was a kid say something like, "Listen, if you can help out, you should. That's what people should do. They should help out all the time." And so, while that's, you know, I don't want to say a good statement, but that's a statement that could be what somebody believes. If that's driving you and you're feeling out of balance and stressed, it's not a good statement for you. It's working against the balance that you want in your life. So, women, when we look at how women respond to situations, and I'm saying women because that's who I work with. I know that men have their own programming and have the things that they're taught. They're often taught, boys don't cry, things like that. So they shove their feelings down, perhaps. But women are often taught, you have to take care of everybody. Women are the ones who, they're nurturers, right? Women do all the extra stuff, put your needs last. Um, oh, my friend Christy was saying the other day, joy, she learned growing up, Jesus, others, and then yourself, right? That's what joy means. Jesus first, then others, yourself last. So that's like might be a common thing that you learned in your household. And that's fine, except that if you're always putting yourself last, you're always feeling overwhelmed and stressed. So it's that programming, that hard drive that has you interpret whatever's going on. It might be something more global, like, um, in terms of the pandemic. You might have grown up with people who are always talking about how terrible things were in the world, how you can't trust other people. Oh, you can't trust other people. They always take advantage of you. So that's in your programming. And then when events happen, that's how you see them. And then that has you be in a place of fear. So I'm just trying to come up with some examples that maybe you might resonate with, or if not those in particular, you can see the point that it is fear that is the bottom line. And that's the virus on your computer that we need to remove. Looking at things through a lens of fear, identifying where that came from in your past and in your programming, removing it, wiping it clean, and then downloading a better program that works for you. So that's the first thing. Whether you're a man or a woman, that's the way that human beings interact with circumstances and the way that they interpret things as stress. The other thing that I wanted to, and I always try to keep this short and sweet so you can just get some nuggets that make a difference for you. But the other thing is resilience. So, in the face of a pandemic that goes on for 2 years, Do you have the resilience and the muscle to get yourself through circumstances that stay at a place that can be stressful for a long time? Do you have that muscle? Have you developed that resilience? And if you haven't, it's totally fine. You just need to learn how to do that. Early in the pandemic, I think probably just about 2 years ago now, I was asked to speak um, for an organization about resilience. And the reason that I was asked is not only what I do for a living, but also my own personal um, experience. So if you don't know me, I have a daughter who passed away in June of 2019, and she was 15 years old, and she had catastrophic medical issues from the night she was born. So, the night she was born, she was given last rites. She was rushed to New York City. We live in New Jersey. She was rushed to New York City and given open heart surgery on the night that she was born. And we had no idea. There was no indication during the pregnancy that there was any problem. So I go to the hospital to deliver a baby who's immediately fighting for her life, enough that they did last rites before they left for New York because it was doubtful she was going to survive. And for the rest of her 15 years, I won't go into the details now because we'll be on way too long, but she had major, major catastrophic issues. 2 open heart surgeries, a stroke after the first one. Her kidneys didn't get enough blood flow. She needed a kidney transplant, and then she got cancer in her brain from the immunosuppression of the transplant drugs from her transplant. And then at 15, her body said she had enough. And so I was asked to speak at that 2 years ago because it was then like April, the pandemic had started. It had been going on for almost 2 months or whatever at that time. And the person said to me, Linda, people are really struggling. They thought we were going to be shut down for 2 weeks, and now it's been a month, and now we're on 2 months. And what can you talk about resilience? And I will tell you that I did not have the muscle and the resilience built at the time when she was born to deal with that kind of circumstance. I didn't. And for the first 5 years of her life, I felt like I was drowning. I felt literally like I was drowning in life, like I couldn't get a breath. I couldn't see past right here what I had to do. And my health issues skyrocketed: fatigue, thyroid, autoimmune, digestive, lack of sleep, all of it through the roof. 5 years, I survived that way. After 5 years, I sort of got my footing around, okay, this is how we're living. This is the child that I have. This is how I need to be prepared in my life. And then I was able to start to, once I got over the feeling of drowning, start to learn how to pace myself. I learned ways of thinking. And I will tell you, my marriage took a huge hit. In fact, our marriage did not survive. We are no longer together. However, I have to give Charlotte's father his props because he was really amazing at helping me rewire how I saw every single event of her life. He really helped me not focus on the worst news. He really helped me rewire my stress. So I'm so, so thankful that he was the person that I went through that experience with because he was great at that and he really helped me. So I just feel like I want to say that. But anyway, after 15 years, I had developed a way of being resilient. I had found a way to rewire my thinking. And it wasn't my way. I actually spent a lot of time, energy, effort, money, education in learning that so that I could survive what was happening in our lives. So when the person asked me to speak 2 years ago, it was really around how do you develop the resilience? And you have to do some daily practices, just like building a muscle in the gym. You don't go once a month and expect your muscles to change, right? You have to do daily practices to get the resilience. You also have to do daily practices to change the rewiring, to get that virus off your hard drive. Because if you're coming from fear, it's going to take something to stop seeing everything through fear. It doesn't just happen. But those are the two things that I would love for you to take away from this conversation is my fear and my stress are just the result of some programming that I got somewhere in my life that is having me see my life through a lens of fear. And just like my computer, I can remove that. I can wipe it clean and I can reprogram something else if I want to do the work to do that. And secondly, I can figure out what I need to do to build resistance. I'm sorry, resilience or resistance. Resistance is good too. Resistance to getting sucked into the fear, but the resilience that I need so that if another pandemic starts next year, or if something in my family shows up that I need to deal with, and it's going to take 15 years for that to stay in place, I can handle it. Each and every one of us can handle it. It's just a matter of those two things. All right. So that's what I wanted you to know about today. And yes, women do seem to be more affected by stress. And when I say more affected, meaning it shows up in a lot more places around their health. It also shows up in relationships and ability to communicate, which is why my marriage did not survive that very, very catastrophic event of having a child that was so sick for so long, right? It affects your relationships and your ability to communicate. So on Thursday, this is kind of a two-parter. I'm going to come in on Thursday and talk a little bit more specifically about how that hits you, and maybe like a certain tool that you can do. I sometimes avoid doing tools because you can't just take one out of context and think that it's going to make a difference. And then if you try it and it doesn't make a difference, you might decide, yeah, that doesn't work. But it's not that it doesn't work; it just doesn't work in outside of a context, really. So anyway, thanks for hopping on with me today. If you have any questions, please post them and I'll get back to you. And I will see you on Thursday at about the same time, 2 Eastern time. Okay. Stay warm if it's cold where you are. Take care. Bye.